Hello and welcome back to another PFF podcast. I'm Mike Renner, and we're back with Sam Monson. He took 2 weeks off because, well, it's June and nothing's going on in the NFL world, but we think he's back. We think he needed to recharge a little bit. He was getting a little lackadaisical on the podcast. We think he's going to be back, bringing his A game. How was the trip, Sam?
Yeah, it was good. Also got to, build up some rest in the bank because this next month of moving across the Atlantic is going to be fun.
Oh, yeah. So that's in the works now. Excited for that. But we're going to talk some football today. On the website, Nathan Jahnke just came out with his little early projections for the 2017 season, over-under win total projections. The NFC is today. The AFC is coming out on Tuesday, and we'll hit that next week. But we're going to go over every NFC team, what Nathan's win total was, what the Vegas win total is, and see just our take on it. Because rosters are basically set at this point. There are going to be some preseason injuries, but I think it's safe to be able to make some projections at this point. So we'll start right at the top with who Nathan Jahnke thinks is going to have the best season in the NFC, and it's the team that won the NFC a season ago, and it's the Atlanta Falcons with 12 wins. Vegas only has them at 9.5, though. Why is Vegas hating on them so much?
Yeah, Vegas is cold. Usually teams that win, a conference just don't do as well the next year. Maybe that's what Vegas is sour on, but it's tough to dislike the Falcons too much. I think they're kind of harsh at 9.5. The only thing I think that kind of goes in Vegas's favor there is that division, I think, overall has gotten a lot tougher this season. So they may not be worse themselves. They may just suffer from the other three teams in their division getting a lot better.
Yeah, it is crazy when I think about, why reasons they could regress and reasons why 9.5 is a reasonable estimate. And the thing is, it has nothing really to do with the players on the field. It has everything to do with things not on the field. There are other players, like you said, the fact that the NFC South is maybe the most loaded division in all of the NFL right now, and the fact that they lost a good deal of their coaching staff on each side of the ball, a ton of turnover. Obviously, Kyle Shanahan on offense, a handful of coaches on defense. I just think that also is going to play a factor. I just don't think they can be you just can't sustain elite level offense like they did a season ago, especially losing your offensive coordinator.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think the guys that they've lost, and in particular losing Kyle Shanahan, we saw what he did to that offense. We saw what he did to Matt Ryan, which I think may be the single biggest part of all of that. And suddenly you take him away. He's away with the 49ers now, and we don't know exactly what this team and what this offense is going to look like, because their offense really was fantastic last year. We saw them able to go and put points against good teams like the Seahawks, teams that they haven't been able to rack up points against in previous seasons. Suddenly they had no trouble scoring against last year. That has got to be a big question mark now. And as much as they've tried to improve other areas, they're not good enough to destroy teams the way they did last year if that offense isn't able to hit on all cylinders the way they were a year ago.
I will still say, though, 9.5, I don't think this goes from elite level offense to, anything outside of a top 5 offense. I still think this is a very talented they have very few holes still. Right guard is probably their only hole that I would say offensively that really worries me. And then on defense, the thing is they pass the ball extremely well offensively, and they can stop the pass now. I think that's one of the underrated aspects that got lost down the stretch and why they ended up making the Super Bowl is the fact that Jarrell Collins came on extremely strong. Robert Alford came on very strong at the end of the year. And they didn't even have their best cornerback in, his name's escaping me right at the moment, Desmond Trufant. They didn't even have him down the stretch. So you get a secondary with very few holes, an offense with very few holes, and I think this team, 9.5 to me seems very low. I might go put money on it right now.
Yeah, like I say, it does seem pretty cold, but I think if you factor in the idea they may get a little bit worse without Shanahan and the rest of that division getting so much better, it's only 2.5 wins from where Nathan has them. I think those things together could amount to 2.5 wins pretty easily.
Yeah, I agree to some degree. Let's move on to a bunch of teams that we projected to have 10 wins this next season. We'll start off with the Dallas Cowboys, who we put at 10 wins, and Vegas, surprisingly, only has at 9.5.
This is the team that I think could have the best season of this group. I think providing we don't get catastrophic sophomore slumps from Dak Prescott and even Ezekiel Elliott to an extent, I think there's so much to like about this Dallas offense. I think they could have the kind of season that the Falcons had a year ago in terms of their offense, and then the defense just needs to step up a little bit. It doesn't need to be good. It just needs to be not bad, and that offense will be able to carry this team to a lot of wins down this season.
Yeah, I mean, they lost some on defense in terms of Morris Claiborne and Brandon Carr from that secondary, but the fact was Claiborne was hurt most of the year, and Anthony Brown filled in extremely well as a rookie. And they didn't win because of their defense, really, a season ago. They were winning because that offense was incredibly dominant in terms of ball control, just in terms of controlling games. And there's no reason to think they won't be at least as good next year. I get that they lose their left guard and Ronald Leary, but there's still so much talent on this offense. Dak Prescott, not a rookie anymore. Ezekiel Elliott, not a rookie anymore. Obviously, his injury luck could strike and go the other way for them than it did a season ago. But there's really no reason for me to think that even 10 wins seems low, in my opinion.
What do you think that offensive line is going to look like next year? Because for the first time in a long time, it has the potential to be a little bit ropey. There's a couple of question marks there now.
Yeah, the Lyle Collins thing is very interesting because I liked him more as a tackle coming out of college at LSU. They moved him to guard. He never really put it all together there, was injured most of last year. And I think they're kicking him out to right tackle this year. I have high hopes for him because Doug Free wasn't anything special a season ago. For as good as that offensive line was, he was by far the weakest link. So I think that is at least kind of a push. And then the left guard, though, is I think where the biggest drop-off is going to come. If Chaz Green really is going to be the starter there, he's not close to what Ronald Leary was as a run blocker. Leary was a people mover. He got underrated in that regard in terms of what he could do on double teams. Just because he was playing with a bunch of all pros doesn't mean he himself couldn't hold his own. So, yeah, it takes a little step back, but you're going a little step back from absolutely dominant, which very much similar to the Falcons, where it's like, yeah, they probably take somewhat of a step back, but you're taking a step back from a team that won a ton of games a season ago.
Somebody posted on Twitter, I can't remember who it was, but they posted Lyle Collins' mock draftable spider chart, and physically, he's in really low percentiles for a lot of tackle measurables. The height, I think arm length as well. I don't remember him getting hit for that kind of stuff pre-draft. I mean, maybe I'm just forgetting
the size
because
concerns. People were saying, was he a tackle or is he a guard? But I think they were still saying similar to someone like Forrest Lamp, where you're good. He's going to be good at either. They thought.
Yeah, I just didn't remember that kind of scrutiny about him. I thought he was considered this pretty solid tackle prospect, and then it was the legal issues, obviously, that dropped him completely out of the draft, and that became the story. I don't remember him getting quite as much scrutiny in terms of the size stuff as everybody else. And then when he just got plugged in at guard because that was the available spot on that offensive line to get him game time early. But it's interesting for a guy that a lot of people like you say is a more natural tackle than he is a guard. He's got a lot of concerns in terms of not measuring up physically to the prototype that we talk about for tackles, however much you actually put into that.
Sam, are you you of all people talking about concerning that he won't measure up with the physical prototypes of a tackle after all the Forrest Lamp stuff? Okay. No, I know. I mean, it is. There's I said, there's no sure thing of him moving out to right tackle, but I'm just saying Doug Free was not good last year. Doug Free got owned by Brandon Graham harder than I saw any tackle not named Donald Stevenson or TJ Clemmings owned a season ago. So that might not be, like I said, it's probably not going to be a downgrade is all I was getting at there.
Of course, the flip side of that is if you take out the 2 games against Brandon Graham, Doug Free was fine.
I mean, they played Brandon Graham twice a year again still, so still better.
That's true.
All right, so I think we both think 9.5 still too low for the Cowboys, right?
Yeah.
We're closer to at least 10. I think it's going to be more like 12 for them when it's all said and done. On to the next team in the NFC that we have projected for 10 wins, and Vegas has projected them for 10 wins as well, and it's the Green Bay Packers.
I mean, this is just Aaron Rodgers, right? That's the reason you give them 10 wins, because you got more confidence in Aaron Rodgers than anybody else in the NFC being the quarterback that drags his team to double-digit wins.
Well, then I think it's also some of the, like you were mentioning earlier, I don't think the NFC North is anything, it's not
Yeah.
It's one of the weaker divisions in that conference, so that you feel more comfortable with them, 5 to 6 wins in conference, that sort of thing.
There's a lot to like about that. It's a trend, certainly in the NFC at the moment, but there's a lot to like about that offense as well, less about the defense. When you look about what they could potentially deploy, that offensive line was the best pass blocking unit in the game last year. You should have a fully healthy Jordy Nelson this season as opposed to a guy working his way back to 100% over the course of the season. Randall Cobb is more of a question mark than he was before, but if we can get a full season of Ty Montgomery at running back, Martellus Bennett coming over at tight end, I mean, look what Aaron Rodgers was able to do with Jared Cook and make him look like a legitimate threat as a tight end. What's he going to be able to do to Martellus Bennett, who's actually a legitimate threat at tight end? I mean, that offense could be special again.
No, I am completely on board with you with this, and I think 10 is crazy low. I would bet the over again and again on this one because you look at last year, how many things went wrong for that team, how Aaron Rodgers struggled so mightily at the beginning of the year, how just bad the defense was in terms of pass coverage on the back end. One, Aaron Rodgers probably won't have those same sort of you can bank on him not being that out of sync for most of the season, hopefully. And you can bank on the fact that the defense just can't be worse than it was a season ago. And they still won 10 games. So any of those things improve, either of those things improve, and all of a sudden they're an 11, a 12-win team. So this one to me seems very much like I would bet the over.
Yeah, again, I'm agreed. I think that offense could be special. Like you said, the defense in stopping the pass last season was horrendous. Somebody there has got to get better, whether it's one of those young guys, Demarius Randall or Quentin Rollins, improving in year 3, because we saw good play from both those guys as rookies. It's not like they've just never shown anything and they've just turned out to be bad young players. They showed good stuff. It's just last year everybody took a step backwards and was terrible. Whether it's those guys bouncing back or whether it's a guy like Kevin King, one of their top rookies, showing well early and actually improving that himself, there's definitely the scope for that defense to get a lot better.
I mean, like I said, can't get worse. So I like over 10 wins there. I keep saying over 10 wins. There's going to be some teams where I say under, I promise. So let's move on to another team that we've projected at 10 wins, the Arizona Cardinals, which this one surprised me when I read it because Vegas only had them at 8. And truthfully, I'm closer to Vegas, and I'd be closer to betting the under than the over on this one. So there you have it. There's one that I'm not liking our projection on.
I was going to say, yeah, there's your team. There's your under. This team, it had a good defense. It just lost one of the best players, one of the most impactful players in Calais Campbell in the middle. And that basically relies entirely on Robert Nkemdiche being pretty amazing in his first year of real action for that not to be a really significant loss. Even if you get quality play from Patrick Peterson and Tyrann Mathieu again in the secondary, even if the back 7 plays really well, that is just such a huge loss in the middle of that defense because there's no other impact player there. And then the offense really was only special when Carson Palmer had that ridiculous, unsustainable season in, a year ago. And I don't know that you're ever going to see that guy again.
No, I 100% agree. I am very much selling on Carson Palmer's, prospects heading forward. I think for all intents and purposes, he's done at the quarterback position. I don't think he's ever going to recapture, like you said, anything close to that magic or even what we saw from him, from like 08 to 2014, where it was just, somewhat average to above average play. I'm not sure we're going to even get that from him. So that worries me. The fact that their offensive line isn't anything special worries me. And the fact that you look at that defensive front, like you just mentioned, there's no one that can really stop the run there. That is a very undersized linebacking core and then unimpressive interior defensive line. They could get absolutely gashed against the run again and again. Yeah, there's some good pieces on the back end in terms of coverage, but if Tyrann Mathieu isn't able to regain his form to what we saw a few years ago after multiple ACL injuries, which we didn't see from him last year, he definitely was not the same player a season ago. That secondary is just doesn't have the same teeth without him.
Yeah, I think there's a good chance we see him bounce back. Like, I'm with you.
I agree. I'm just saying, it's no sure thing at this point.
Yeah, and even in terms of pass rush up front, I mean, you've got Chandler Jones, who should be the primary pass rusher. But again, you take out Calais Campbell, you're relying on Kemdiche being a pretty immediate impact pass rusher in the middle. Otherwise, there's nothing there.
Yeah, I mean, you can get something maybe from Hassan Reddick as a blitzer. I get that they have two good edge rushers, but you still need some sort of push up front, and they're not going to get that. That's really one of the worst interiors in the NFL right now, I think.
Yeah, and I think that's concerning. I don't see 10 wins from this side at all.
What do you think about 8? Would you be over or under 8? Like I said, I'm under 8 even.
They I guess, get the benefit.
I get that the NFC West sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And especially with no Jeff Fisher there, they should actually just legitimately beat the Rams this time, as opposed to somehow conspiring to lose to Jeff Fisher within the division.
Well, Jared Goff. Come on, we'll get to that later.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I'm with you. I think 8 wins is definitely closer to where they should be, and I guess I could see them at 7 and 9.
Oh, talk you into it. Nice. All right. One more 10-win team, and it's another one in the NFC West, and it's the Seattle Seahawks, which Vegas actually gave them the highest projection of anyone in the NFC at 10.5 wins, which I'll just say right now, that one, I'm not sure how I don't know how they have the highest win total. I mean, I could see them hitting that. I could see them going over that, but I don't see how you could put them as, the odds-on favorite, in the NFC there. Not odds-on.
Yeah, but I think that definitely makes more sense than the Falcon or the Cardinals being in the same bracket as the Seahawks. I think there's a clear difference in quality between these two sides. As much as the Seahawks team remains massively flawed, that offensive line is still bad. Even with improvements on paper, it still looks bad.
Were there improvements on paper? I mean, they signed Luke Joeckel, but that doesn't mean it's an improvement on paper.
It has to be. I mean, George Fant was the left tackle. How could it be worse?
Okay,
Even standard Luke Joeckel play is an upgrade over George Fant at left tackle. Yeah, I mean, like I said, it doesn't look like it's going to get much better, but it should get better. But it doesn't matter. Everything else that they usually use to win is still in place. Russell Wilson is the fulcrum of that offense. The defense should remain strong on paper. The only real question is how they're going to replace the starter opposite. Richard Sherman, whether they're going to have a real
Shaquille Griffin.
That's what I'm going for. Yeah. I really do like Shaquille, but almost all corners struggle year one. So even if he becomes a good player down the line, I'm not expecting it year one necessarily. So yeah, I just think this is a much better side than the Cardinals in the same division. I can't quite see how Nathan's got them level.
Well, I definitely agree. I don't know what Nathan's smoking doing these projections, but it's not. I want some of that. But 10.5 still is too high to me. I still think that's too high, especially with Earl. Just how worse that defense looked without Earl Thomas, and the fact that with his broken leg, there's no sure thing that he comes back to being Earl Thomas. It takes an elite trait set to execute the way he did, and if he's slows down a step, loses a step, is a little bit more hesitant because of the injury, all of a sudden Earl Thomas isn't Earl Thomas, and that defense isn't the Seahawks defense that we know. So I'm a little concerned from that regard. 10 wins seems fair to me. 10.5 seems too rich. I think I would bet the under if I had to.
I don't really have any concerns with Earl Thomas. I think it's tricky to find the right word, but a simple leg break, no complications.
Yeah,
just a leg fracture. Yeah, exactly. Just a fracture of a bone that's supposed to be keeping your leg upright. Is about as simple an injury as you can get in the NFL in terms of something that you can come back with from 100%. So I don't think there should be any drop off at all from Earl Thomas. I think we should see him back week 1 100%. And at which point, like you say, that transforms that defense and makes everything a lot better.
I will say, they did draft maybe one of my favorite impact interior pass rushers right away, and I think Malik McDowell in the second round, I think he is what that defensive line was missing a season ago. Didn't have nearly the same sort of ferocity that we've seen in years past. I think he's perfect if he replaces Atiba Rubin there, the 3 technique. That D-line could be, dominant once again. So I'll give them that. Like I said, 10 wins seems fair to me. I just don't get the idea of them being the favorite in the NFC at this point. On to a few 9-win teams here, and one that I'll say surprised me because they have not won 9 wins. They have not won 9 games in a season in a while, and it's the New Orleans Saints. We have them at 9 wins. The Vegas has them at 8 wins. I'm going to have to side with the Vegas on this one because just until that defense gets solved, I'm out on the Saints. They sucker me in every year because of Drew Brees, because of the fact that he puts up gaudy numbers and that he can pass on basically anybody. But until I see with my own eyes that this secondary can actually cover receivers down the field, I'm gonna sell on 9 wins.
It really should, though.
I know that's the thing. It's like it should. Like 9 wins seems fair if you look at the actual roster, but I need to see it.
The thing is with this division, somewhere it's going to be wrong because all of these teams look to get so much better on paper, and they can't all get that much better. Just they're going to take wins off each other. Someone is going to end up with a much worse record than I think they deserve based on how good they are in terms of quality. But I absolutely love the Saints draft. I thought it was the best draft in the entire NFL.
Whoa, okay. All right, big step.
Seriously, I think they had the best draft in the entire league. I didn't dislike anything in it. I think almost top to bottom their picks were outstanding. When you look at getting a guy like Nick Fairley back, getting a guy like Sheldon Rankins, actually, getting the real Sheldon Rankins as opposed to the injury struck guy from his rookie season. There's so much to like about this team. Even just on defense, they've added so many pieces that should improve the whole picture. I get entirely where you're coming from in terms of it should have been a lot better for several seasons now. And for some reason, every time they add someone, it just doesn't seem to make a difference, especially at linebacker, which seems to be some sort of weird kryptonite in New Orleans for linebackers.
Well, they added Manti Te'o. That's not going to solve their issues?
No.
Okay.
No, I don't think it is.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
But you add all that stuff together, and I think this is a really good team. I think they've made huge improvements. Losing Armstead at left tackle for a significant amount of time hurts.
That one definitely. Although it looks almost prescient the fact that they drafted Ryan Ramczyk in the first round. But still.
So I really do think that this team is well set up to win a lot of games.
I agree. Like I said, I have to see it first. They've burned me so many times. Every year I feel like, they signed 4 free agents on defense. How could they be worse? And, well, somehow they managed to be. But the Marshawn Lattimore pick I loved. I think he can step in right away and be a top 25 cornerback. I think he's that sort of talent just from what I saw from him. Delvin Breaux coming back fully healthy is going to be huge. They could have 2 cornerbacks that are actually good for the first time in a long time. And I want to get on board with them. They got to prove it to me first. But I love their offseason. I thought it was very good. They're still going to burn me though. They're going to get I'm going to talk myself into betting over 8 wins, and they're going to go 7-9 again. I just know.
They're a team where when you look at it on paper, there isn't that much to dislike, and there's several really strong areas.
Agreed. All right, on to another 9-win team that we've projected, and it's the Philadelphia Eagles. 9 wins. Vegas has them at 8. Where do you see them, Sam?
This is all down to the development or otherwise of Carson Wentz at quarterback.
Yes.
The Carson Wentz we saw for the first month of the season, if they get that guy or something like that guy for the entirety of the year, it's a really good team. If they get the guy that struggled for the rest of the year, they've got problems, and not least because they're going to start rethinking that whole quarterback solution thing. But, if he does develop, if we see a step forward in year 2, they've added some weapons. Alshon Jeffrey should be at least one viable, legit starting wide receiver, number 1 type. They've got Jordan Matthews, who isn't that guy, but can be a really solid slot option for them. Torrey Smith is a deep threat, I guess, albeit not much else. But they've at least added some guys there that can give him something to throw to. The defense I think is really good. If they can just get somebody in the secondary that can actually cover, because that was a real problem last year. Corners that really couldn't.
But he's only
one. Corners in particular. Yeah. The corners that really just couldn't hold up. They really need somebody there to step up, whether it's Jalen Mills in year 2. It seems like a long shot.
No.
Whether they get, legitimate play out of Sidney Jones in his first year, even though they're likely to kind of redshirt him. Somebody in that secondary needs to step up and actually cover somebody.
No, you touched on the 2 biggest things there. It's Wentz. like, what does he do in year two? And then two, it's, can any cornerback, be good? Because they're awful. Like, just on paper, they should be awful. They were awful last year. And if you're going to rely on Sidney Jones and Rasul Douglas to fix your defense, that's worrisome, relying on two rookies. So I want to go back, though, and touch on Carson Wentz and how weird his rookie season was. The fact that for the first, 4 weeks of the season, he legitimately looked like not just like a future franchise quarterback. He looked like he could be, a top 5 quarterback. He just wasn't making mistakes with the football, which is the crazy thing. He looked like Dak Prescott, except for with, more success downfield and less help on the outside. And then all of a sudden, he started throwing the ball into triple coverage. That Vikings game was abysmal. Like that game was one of the worst performances I've seen at the quarterback position in recent memory. That was like the Peyton Manning against the Chiefs. That was just, he looked like he didn't know what he was looking at play after play, just didn't know what coverages were coming at him. He might not have, realistically, because he was throwing awful. He had one pass that could have been picked off by 3 different Vikings at one time. Bad game, but just looked like 2 different guys from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, which I don't think ever happens as a rookie. Usually it's the opposite. Usually guys get better as the season goes along. He got worse. One of the facts was the fact that his offensive line really took a step back after Lane Johnson got popped. But I think the offensive line is going to be good this year. I think if Lane Johnson's back, Jason Peters is back, that is a solid core on the offensive line. The only real question mark is Jason Kelce at center. I think they've given him enough on the outside, and Alshon Jeffrey, Torrey Smith, to where there's really no excuses there. So I think this offense is going to be good. Like I said, though, secondary is the only thing. One of the best front fours in football, if not the best front four, with Timmy Jernigan there, with Derek Barnett added now. I really don't know what to make of this team, but I think 8 to 9 wins is where I'd put them, just based on, like I said, how good the front four is, how good the talent around them on offense is. But 2 big question marks. I wouldn't want to bet this team because of them.
To illustrate the Carson Wentz split season thing, through the first 4 weeks of the season, he was the 2nd highest graded quarterback at PFF. The only guy ahead of him was Derek Carr. Dak Prescott at that time was down in 11th place. So first 4 weeks of the season, the guy was insane. The rest of the time, for the remainder of the season, he was the 29th graded quarterback, which put him between Ryan Fitzpatrick and Jared Goff in terms of quality performance. Now, it's not quite as bad as Jared Goff, who managed that grade on like 390 snaps over the same span, which is truly quite epic in terms of terrible performance. But he went from basically as good as anybody in the league to being a borderline starter in that split from 4 weeks to the rest of the year.
It was ugly and really inexplicable. So that's why I really just don't know what to make of this team this year. It very much like the Packers win total comes down to Aaron Rodgers. The Eagles win total comes very much on the shoulders of Carson Wentz. All right, on to the team we just mentioned, actually, in the Eagles talk. Another 9-win team, the Minnesota Vikings. We have them at 9 wins. Vegas has them at 8.5. Sam, what do you have them at?
This team is tough. They're a team that basically addressed every single hole they had in the 2016 season this offseason. I just don't know if they addressed any of them particularly well.
In quotation marks there, yeah.
Yeah, so, you've added in a pair of tackles, but they're Riley Reif and Mike Remmers. Granted, those are significant upgrades over TJ Clemmings and Jeremiah Stiles, but they're still not good. I mean, even if those guys both play the best we've ever seen from them, that makes them abbove average. You've got Joe Berger. Yeah, average to above average. Joe Berger's their best offensive lineman, who is deep into his 30s, and I think has said now that he's retiring after this season.
He could definitely be losing it at this point. It's not it's relying on him as your best offensive lineman's a little concerning. Is all I'll say. Stephon
Diggs is their best wide receiver, but clearly can't be a number one kind of guy.
Adam Thielen's
yes. So that leaves you with Adam Thielen, or hoping Laquan Treadwell actually, turns up in year 2 and gets on the field and sees
Floyd
more.
Too. Mike Floyd was good at one point.
Yeah, until now he's been under. He's managed.
I don't know what's going to happen with him, but
trouble. Yeah, not good.
A lot of question marks.
So
we'll just say.
huge question marks at wide receiver. Running back should be okay. You've got Latavius Murray, who's added, should be a solid guy there. Dalvin Cook, I think, has the ability to be a special running back at this level.
Yeah, another position where it could be
those
worse.
two.
You know, another, like I've been saying.
Somewhere in that group between those two, they should be able to create something pretty impressive in that backfield if the offensive line is even halfway passable. The defense should be good. I think Mike Zimmer has a habit of creating defenses that are good, if not great. Yeah. You know, they seem to flirt with greatness, really but never actually get there. I think this defense is similar. It's every now and again it's threatened to be amazing, but never quite sustains it over a long term. I think the front four still needs a bit of work, particularly inside.
Floyd really killed them.
Yeah.
The fact that he's maybe done.
And they never really addressed that. I mean, Jaleel Johnson in the 4th round. Tom Johnson is basically their best 3-tech at this point, and he's more of a rotational guy that can get some
you can't rely on him as an everyday player.
Particularly when you consider that Linval Joseph basically won't be playing on passing downs, or if he is, won't be bringing much pressure. There needs to be someone, like we said with the Cardinals, there's no one there in that middle that's going to push the pocket and actually generate some pressure up the middle. It's all the pressure from them is going to come either on the blitz or on the edge. And, you know, as good as that secondary is, it's not going to be able to carry the team if the front four can't be consistently disruptive. So, yeah, I think it's a team that's probably going to be pretty good again, but I don't see it doing much other than that.
Yeah, that's very much how I feel about the Vikings this year. They just seem like they'll be fine. Like, there's nothing that gets me too excited, but like they don't have a ton of holes. They don't have a ton of places where I'm like, oh, that's how you attack this team. This is where you can shut them down. It's just, it's not going to be a very dynamic offense. It's not going to be a great downfield offense, especially with Sam Bradford at the helm. It seems like they're probably going to be a lot of short passing stuff. Dalvin Cook is definitely going to improve that running game. But like I said, there's just not much to get excited about here. And especially with the fact that Terrence Newman is going to be incredibly old at the end of the year, 39 by the time the season ends. You can't rely on him to be as dominant as he was a season ago. Trey Waynes hasn't showed anything to get me too excited. Mackenzie Alexander obviously didn't play much last year to get me too excited. So defense will be good, not great. Offense will be maybe average at that point. I think the 9-win projection's about right.
I mean, the good news for them is that it would be impossible to have a worse injury luck than they had a year ago, with basically everyone of significance getting injured at some point or other and going down for the year.
Fair. But Sam Bradford replacing Teddy wasn't like a huge, it was a
no, other than, that was more of that cost them more this year than it did last year, in truth, with the 1st round pick going in the draft.
Fair. All right, so we're both about where Vegas and we are with the Vikings. 9, 8.5, 8, somewhere around there. On to the last team that we've projected to have 9 wins. Another one in the NFC South, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We had them at 9. Vegas has them at 8.5. What do you have them at?
Yeah, the Bucs might have improved as much as any team in the offseason. So if I like the Saints draft, the best of any team in the league, I think when you add in free agency, Tampa Bay might have done the best overall when you fold both those things in, the draft and free agency. You know, when you add in a couple of defensive line weapons like Chris Baker from Washington, your boy Stevie T from USC, the big nose tackle, that should immediately massively boost that defensive line that hasn't been able to get a run stuffer next to Jarrell McCoy for what seems like years. There's a lot to like. Deshaun Jackson being added in free agency is a
That's
real,
my favorite one by far.
Not just a great deep threat, but a perfect complement to Mike Evans. You know, Mike Evans remains the number one. He should still get the majority of the targets, but Deshaun Jackson, probably more than any other receiver they could have got, should free him up because of what he does and the way he will force defenses to play them slightly differently. The big question mark with this team remains on the offensive line, but other than that, I like almost all of this team.
Yeah, it was comical at times how teams knew where Jameis Winston was going with the ball on any 3rd and long. It's just, he was pumping it to Mike Evans. He really didn't care. He wasn't necessarily, throwing into unfavorable situations. Like, he wasn't throwing into, obviously, he wasn't misreading coverages, but he was just pumping it to Mike Evans no matter what, and teams just knew that. They were doubling him, that sort of thing. Deshaun Jackson's not going to let them do that. O.J. Howard is not going to let you do that at this point. I think they can do a lot of creative stuff with O.J. Howard and with Cameron Brate, who was so good out of the slot. And Jameis Winston, his best throw is the post to the middle of the field. That's his money throw. He's so good at hitting it right on the break. You don't even need much separation. So a guy like O.J. Howard can run that route ad nauseum and be a problem. So I really like that pick. That was one of my only times I would say a tight end was a good pick in the first round, was because it fit this offense so well. I don't know if I'm completely there, though, with their defense, especially that secondary. I get that Vernon Hargreaves, was a top pick. I liked him coming out. He did not show a lot for me as a rookie. Sometimes that's just, fact of being a rookie in the NFL. You can see huge leaps from year 1 to year 2, like we saw from Landon Collins. Sometimes it's just hard to, pick up a playbook and play at the full game speed that you were used to playing at in college. But we'll see there. And then Brent Grimes, obviously getting into his 30s, I don't think he's going to be able to repeat what he did a season ago. We could see a step back from him. So the secondary is the biggest, by far, concern to me on this team. But like you said, all the moves they made this offseason where I was on board with. I loved all of them. The fact that they get J.R. Sweezy back in the offensive line, they might be able to actually run the ball effectively this year. There's a lot to like here. But again, NFC South, every team looks like they're loaded. I'm not sure if the Tampa Bay rises to the top of this division. I think, again, another team where 8 to 9 wins seems about fair to me.
Yeah, I guess if there's one team in the NFC South that I have the least confidence in terms of actually realizing the potential they have, when we said that all those teams look good on paper, it would be the Bucs. I think the other three have a better shot on paper of actually taking that step forward.
It's the Jameis Winston thing, too. Like, I was so on board for him to be that guy last year, but just so many inaccurate throws, which inaccuracy is tough to all of a sudden go from inaccurate to accurate, which that concerns me a lot. I love his anticipation. I love, where he goes with the ball. He loves going downfield with it, but so many overthrows down the field, which those just lead to picks in the NFL. And so I feel like you're never going to get rid of the turnovers with Jameis. You just hope he has the big plays to offset them. We'll see if Deshaun Jackson can help fix that. Like I said, I'm not completely sold that it will. So 9
Did
wins,
we miss Carolina in our list of 9-win teams?
No,
did
I was just about to say next 9-win team, Carolina Panthers. And another team where Vegas has them at 8.5. So Vegas has the NFC South at Saints 8 wins, Bucks 8.5 wins, Panthers 8.5 wins, and Falcons 9.5. So 4 teams, all with the floor being an 8-win team. That's pretty crazy. We have them all winning over 8 games, which it might happen. I'm not sure if that's ever happened, though. Have 4 teams in the same division all go above 500.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, I think that somewhere along the lines, one of these teams is going to end up with a worse record than they actually deserve. Whether if we assume that Vegas and our projections kind of give you a vague indication of what a team deserves to have based if they play up to that level, I think someone's going to get screwed out of a couple of wins. Whether it's dropping wins to a team within the division that emerges as, really good. If the Falcons do take a step forward, if they become the class of the division, they could take a couple of wins off the Bucks or a couple of wins off the Saints or Panthers, and suddenly those teams are staring at a worse record than they probably deserve. And I think, like I said, I think the Bucks are the team that probably becomes that side. The Panthers, though, are interesting because they have really lurched over the past few years from, average to really good to back to average again.
The Panthers are interesting to me because of what they did offensively in the draft and what this offense could look like, in 2017. It could look like a college offense. They could do a lot of things with Cam Newton, with Curtis Samuel, with Christian McCaffrey that, defenses might not be especially ready for and, could throw a lot of defense coordinators for a loop in terms of option stuff, in terms of running backs getting matched up on linebackers when linebackers should not be guarding guys like Christian McCaffrey or Curtis Samuel. So they can do a lot of things. I'm not sure it all of a sudden is going to make this an elite offense, or bring them back to the form of 2015, when Cam Newton won the MVP. I'm not sure he ever gets back there. That seemed like a lot of lightning in a bottle type of stuff. I just don't think he's accurate enough to consistently do that. my questions again come on the defensive side of the ball. The front four just isn't that anything special. Outside of Kawan Short, there's really not a lot of pass rush. I know Mario Addison can get a little bit, but it's just not a great defensive line. Linebackers I'm fine with, and then the secondary is just, again, it's just okay. So another team where I think we might see a lot of the teams in the NFC South end up around 8 wins, and 8 wins seems about right for the Panthers to me.
Going back to the offense for a minute, like, I am so excited at the prospect of this offense, of what they could be with McCaffrey and with Curtis Samuel.
Oh, no, I'm with you. Like, they could, but where I was going with that is that, I'm so worried that they're going to screw it up. You know, you've got this potential. This offense could be something amazing that we haven't really seen before in the NFL. On the other hand, it could just be a regular offense with some gimmick plays in there, which would suck. It would just be such a letdown when you consider what they're able to deploy. My question, though, is, do you think Cam Newton can actually be amazing at that kind of offense that requires more accuracy in the short stuff and, requires a bit of reliability? That, again, is my thing. I just said he's not accurate enough to me to run hey, you got to complete 2 to 3 passes every time you want to get a first down. He is a down the field, big play quarterback who misses underneath more than the other elite level quarterbacks do for the most part. So that's very concerning. The fact that, his completion percentage, or his adjusted completion percentage against man coverage last year, was the worst in the entire NFL. Just when he has to fit it into tight windows, he just wasn't doing it often enough. So if that's going to be the case this year, if he's going to have to execute, a lot of whip routes, a lot of stuff out of the backfield, if he's going to have to hit those guys in good ball placement, I'm not sure it's going to be a perfect fit. It would have made more sense to do this offense with someone like Alex Smith than Cam Newton. Cam Newton's still probably going to run it better, but it would fit more to the strengths of someone like Alex Smith. So, like I said, I like it on paper. I'm waiting to see the actual execution of it. What is it actually going to look like? Is it actually going to run effectively? That remains to be seen. So that's why I'm still teetering on the 8-win sort of projection for them.
Yeah, I would say this is possibly the third best team in this division, with the potential they could be the second best if they do strike something ridiculously special with that offensive personnel combination.
Agreed. All right. On to the New York Giants at 8 wins. That's it for the 9-win teams. New York Giants at 8 wins. It feels like we have everyone projected fairly highly in the NFC. Not sure how that ended up working out, but 8 wins for the New York Giants. Vegas has them at 9, though, which surprises me to some degree. Where do you have them at, Sam?
Yeah, that seems kind of rich to me.
I think people are still, the outside world is still a little higher on Eli Manning than we are. And by a little higher, I mean probably a lot higher. We're pretty down. We're pretty down on Eli Manning at this point.
Well, we're pretty down on Eli Manning's play at the moment, and I am holding myself back from writing Tom Brady-esque Eli Manning is done articles all off season, only because it's happened before that I got burned. But I've made the point before that if you look at the age that Eli Manning is, he is at the age where quarterbacks used to retire. Quarterbacks used to decline and hit the point where they could no longer get it done and walk out of the league at that point. Now, okay, we're in a league where they get hit less often than they did before, and he's, had a pretty impressive Ironman durability, and we've seen guys like Peyton Manning and Tom Brady go on to the point where they're 40 and that kind of thing. So it's not quite the same world as it used to be, but it wouldn't be it wouldn't be surprising if he hit this point in his career and that was the physical decline. That was the point where Eli Manning was never going to get back to where he used to be.
And when it's not like, we've seen Eli shirtless. It's not like he's keeping himself in impeccable shape here.
And when you consider that this is an offense that should make him look a lot better than it does because of the high volume of, short, easy completions and that kind of thing, he should be able to look better than this, not be posting his worst grades since his rookie season, that kind of thing. So I really don't expect him to bounce back. And if anything, I expect him to have another pretty ugly year and us to start some serious
Davis Webb talk.
Yeah, Eli Manning is done kind of conversations. At which point you're basically expecting him to be propped up entirely by the receiving quality of Odell Beckham, Brandon Marshall, whatever Evan Engram can bring to the table at that kind of tight end slot role. The running backs, I don't know, look particularly impressive. The offensive line still looks pretty ropey. And then you're going back to whether the defense can carry this team. And as good as the defense is, I don't expect it to be kind of, capable of carrying an entire team to an over 500 record.
No, if Eli Manning does not, bounce back this year, if he's not good this year, like, he's done at this point for all intents and purposes. He is done because with Odell Beckham, Brandon Marshall, Evan Engram, Sterling Shepard, there are few, if not any, teams with a better receiving core in the NFL right now. That's about as good as it gets offensively around you. I get that the offensive line's not good, but that's an offense that gets the ball out quickly, so it's not the worst thing in the world to have a bad offensive line. If he doesn't bounce back this year, I think it's time to say he is done, because he was bad last year. Not just bad, he was like bottom 5 quarterback in the league type of bad.
I'm going to be so mad if he was in fact done this season and I didn't have the guts to write that article because of the Tom Brady thing.
Sam, come on. I can't believe you of all people would be shell shocked by the Brady stuff and not want to write. Just go write it, Sam. It's worthwhile.
I just don't want to do it again.
Get your name out there, and hopefully I would be confident writing that because I think he is done, but that's just.
You write it then.
Okay, I'll write it, and I'll get my I'll take my lumps if I'm wrong. On to finally some below 500 teams here that we've projected. The Chicago Bears first up. We have them at 7 wins. Vegas has them at 5.5. Not sure how we got to 7. I'm definitely siding with Vegas on this one. They got one of the worst secondaries in the league still. You
don't see the Mike Glennon train getting rolling?
Dude, I love Mike Glennon. I was on board with Mike Glennon. I was calling for teams to trade for him, each of the past 2 off seasons. No one did it. I think he can be a competent starter in the NFL. You still have to have a secondary, though, and they don't. They have a bad secondary. That's about, no sugar.
You can't ever trust a quarterback that can't fit his head into a helmet. I mean, that's the bottom line there. Mike Lennon's head does not belong inside a football helmet.
I don't know. We haven't seen it in 2 years. Maybe it got bigger.
What kind of exercises do you need to do in your head in order to fill that gap where
HGH, it's called.
The only thing is extra cheek pads are able to fill? I don't think the offense is going to be particularly special with Mike Glennon at quarterback. I think he's been a bit unfortunate that they then went hard after a rookie. So it's a 1-year audition, essentially, whatever happens.
I mean, it's not like he deserved more than that, though.
That's kind of what I mean. They basically structured it like that anyway with his contract. So it's not a huge surprise. It's just a bit, unlucky for him. I don't think the secondary is going to be terrible. I think it's capable of being okay, no?
Capable of being okay means that, if that's your ceiling, then I think you're a bad secondary.
Yeah, okay.
So Prince Mukamara is about average, but his injury concerns, he just doesn't make it through a full season, it seems like. Kyle Fuller, I guess, was injured all of last year, looked all right in year 2, but still nothing to make me. They just have guys who no one really. If you don't have one good player in the secondary, usually that's a concern.
Yeah, they seem to be kind of stocked full of average guys rather than having any real standout. I have moderate hopes for the performance of Crevon LeBlanc going forward, just because I liked him coming out. I think he did well enough as a rookie, given. What was he, undrafted as a free agent that year? I think he could actually stick and do something good. Almost all of his negative last year came in one ugly game against the Packers. But other than that, he was actually pretty good.
I have no opinions either way on Crevon LeBlanc.
Crazy.
You obviously have stronger feelings on him. I will say, though, I do love Jordan Howard. I think the interior of that offensive line is fantastic. They will have a good running game. I just am not as confident about the pass game. Kevin White as your number 1 worries me. I don't think he's a number 1 yet. I just don't think he's consistent enough, and obviously he has to be healthy to be a number 1, and we haven't seen him be able to do that. So the receiving core is nothing special. Mike Glennon is, like we've said, Mike Glennon. 7 wins to me is crazy. as our projection.
I don't know. That's crazy, but it does seem
not crazy,
optimistic.
But it's
high.
Yeah. 5.5 is more my speed. I'm going even the under on the 5.5 at this point. On to another 7-win team that we've projected, the Washington Redskins. Vegas has them at 7.5. What do you have them at, Sam?
Well, I guess if you want to say that
they won 8.
Chicago's, I guess if you want to say that Chicago's is crazy, this is the team that I would point to illustrate that, because I think the idea these two teams are on the same win total is nuts. I think the Redskins are a much better team than Chicago. Like I said, they won 8 last year. I think they've got better. You know, they've added a guy like Jarrell Pryor, who he's all potential. You know, we've been saying it last year that the reason he was such an intriguing free agent for Cleveland is that was his first year playing wide receiver. If he does take that step forward in year 2, he could be phenomenal. You know, the physical skills that he has are incredible. You add in him, you add in Josh Doxson coming back after an injury-ravaged rookie season. I mean, that's potentially an amazing receiving core straight off the bat, albeit, you know, they basically lost a pretty good one in free agency with Deshaun Jackson and Pierre Garçon leaving. They might not notice it if those two play to their potential. So I think the defense has got a lot of skills there as well. I'm really excited to see what Sua Cravens can do in year 2. Even if he is being moved to safety, I don't think they quite know what to do with him yet. But I think whatever it is, if he's on the field, he's going to be making plays. I think this is a better side than Chicago, definitely.
No, I agree. And then Jonathan Allen added on that defensive interior, I think at least is able to replace Chris Baker. And I think it would be an upgrade in terms of what he can bring as a pass rusher. I think he's the type of guy, just from what I've saw from him in college, who can step in right away. Not like Joey Bosa-esque, but can, you know, be productive as a rookie. I don't see any sort of rookie growing pains with him. And like you said, the offense is still going to be good. Like, I still think it's a good offense. They passed for a ton of yards a season ago. I think they're going to do very similar things this year with Terrell Pryor, Josh Doxson. They could even be, like you said, this could be a better receiving core than it was if both those guys live up to their potential. And then Samaje Perine could be an upgrade over Rob Kelly. They could actually have somewhat of a dynamic running threat. I'm not actually on board with Perine. I am very down on him. I thought he was incredibly overrated coming out of Oklahoma because of the fact that he, you know, broke the single game rushing record. I just don't think he is a dynamic running threat, but he could be. Like, I could be wrong about them. You never know going into the NFL. So 7 wins, like I said, I said it last year. The best offensive talent outside of, you know, the quarterback and running back positions in the NFL. But I still think that's close to true. I'm not 100% still on board with it, but ton of talent on offense. Defense really, I think, got better from a season ago. So 7 wins seems low. I'll just say that. I think they're an 8 to 9 win team again.
I think definitely the backfield is a question mark. I think Kirk Cousins has done enough to have that caveat taken off. You know, I think he can. You don't need to include Kirk Cousins anymore in the for the quarterback. If you
include quarterback, then you're like you throw like Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers into the mix of that.
No, sure, but I don't think he's not an asterisk anymore in terms of, you know,
no, he's not. But yeah, I get what you're saying. On to the Detroit Lions, who Lions fans, this is the point of the program where you turn off.
Not again. Forgot about that.
Oh man, we just can't seem to see eye to eye with Lions fans in terms of the quality of their franchise.
Does Vegas have our back?
No, Vegas does not have our back. We put them at 6 wins. Vegas has them at 8. Man, I'm closer to 6, man. I'm closer to 6 wins again. You're probably closer to 6 too.
Oh, all right. Look, this team is just not that talented. It isn't. I mean, Matthew Stafford had maybe the best season of his career, and it still wasn't enough to do a huge amount to this roster. It just isn't that good. You're just gonna have to accept it. I'm sorry. Deal with it.
I agree. It's like Darius Slay's good in the secondary. Glover Quinn's good in the secondary. Outside of that, Ziggy Ansah's good on the D-line. Outside of that, it's like there's not a lot of talent in that defense. And it was kind of smoke and mirrors offensively. A lot of comeback wins last year. I don't think they go 500 this year. I'll just say it. I don't think they go 500.
And even their moves on, like, in free agency was basically just shuffling players. You know, they just shipped out 2 reasonable players, brought back 2 reasonable players, wash, and then you lose Decker for a while. You've now got Greg Robinson, a left tackle. That in and of itself is a loss of 2 wins. Forget it.
Under 500. All right, that's our projection. On to the we'll just do these two teams together, sort of. The dregs of the NFC West. What are you guys doing? The San Francisco 49ers and the Los Angeles Rams. We've both projected at 4 wins. Vegas has the 49ers at 4.5, the Rams at 5.5. I'll be honest, I'm taking the under on both.
The team I think that has the chance to get best quickest is the 49ers, just because of what they've added in the coaching staff. Yeah. I think Kyle Shanahan has the ability to add that kind of impact immediately in terms of what he can do to the offense. I just think that team has the ability to get better. I'm really intrigued what they do on defense with the guys that they have in terms of DeForest Buckner, Eric Armstead, and now Solomon Thomas. Those are 3 guys that, if you wanted to treat them that way, could essentially be the same player in terms of position.
No,
they have to figure out a way of getting all 3 of them on the field at the same time, which is interesting. I'm really curious to see how that works. The Rams,
and they're switching to the Seattle cover 3. They're switching to 4-3, and
I think that's the only way it can work is by doing that. I think if they stayed 3-4, there's no way they could get all 3 on the field at the same time.
I agree.
The Rams, it's going to come down to whether Jared Goff can be anything less than horrendous, because as a rookie, there was almost no glimmer of positivity from him at all, which is concerning.
Yeah, the Rams really is basically Jared Goff. Like, is he still awful, or is he anything? Because it's not a terrible roster. I mean, with a good quarterback, with an elite quarterback, this team could make the playoffs, especially with that defensive line still intact, still, one of the best front fours, if not, right up there with the Eagles, in my opinion, for the best front four in football with what they have. But offensively, if Jared Goff is still what we saw from a season ago, they're toast. Like, that team is just toast. Yeah. The one interesting storyline I will say is, like I mentioned with the 49ers, the fact that they're switching to Seattle's, cover 3 defense. They have some big corners now. And Rashard Robinson, Ahkello Witherspoon, those are some long corners. They could all of a sudden make some sort of headway with that defense. In a few years' time, if those guys come good, we saw some real good play from Rashard Robinson early in the season last year. He had some really impressive games. They could have a legit defense in a couple of years' time with the draft picks they added last year.
And those front guys. I mean, DeForest Buckner and Solomon Thomas were 2 of the players that we liked the most over the past couple of years. They're both incredibly disruptive forces. In the right scheme, they could both turn into something special.
I will say, though, end of the day, I don't think either of these teams. 4 wins is about right. So yeah. I'd go both under on both. The 40, like I said, if I go over on any, it's the 49ers. But, man, I'd go pump the under right now. 5.5 on the Rams. I don't see how they make it there. No way. All right, that's it for us. That's the NFC. We'll be doing the AFC next week. And make sure to go rate and review us on iTunes. Every week this offseason, we're giving out a free subscription to our new Elite product. If you go and leave a 5-star review with your Twitter handle, with an email address, some way to contact you. Truthfully, guys, not a lot of competition. If you did it for 3 straight weeks, gave up with 3 different accounts, there's probably a 99% chance that you'd get one of the free ones. So go ahead, leave that 5-star review. We'll be in touch with the winners from a week ago. And go check out our Elite products, profootballfocus.com/subscriptions. We think you guys will like them. We'll be back next week talking AFC. Hope you guys have a good one.